I immediately put up a temporary closure sign at my diner and headed towards the apartment where my son and his wife lived. Inside the room, it was pitch dark, and I couldn't see well. It was chilly, and it didn't seem like the heating was on. Calling out the names of my 2 grandchildren, I entered the room.
Kathy, Tony. It's Grandma.
As I moved further in the dimly lit living room, 2 small figures were moving. When I turned on the lights, there was Kathy, painfully thin, in the freezing room. Beside her, Tony was trembling, eating a banana from Kathy's hand. 4 anxious eyes were staring at me.
Kathy, Tony.
Unable to resist, I hugged them both. Kathy and Tony clung tightly to me, sobbing loudly. Little hands gripped my body tightly. How scared they must have been. Their mother collapsed and hadn't returned since going to the hospital. They felt like it would burst from fear. Thinking about their feelings, my heart ached. Their father, Mike, wasn't here. When I called to ask where he was, he laughed and replied,
"On a trip with the family. Coming back tomorrow."
"I see. Safe travels then." With that, I hung up the phone. Later, when he returned home, he would witness an unbelievable scene. I'm Beth. I run a small eatery, and today during lunchtime, it's bustling as usual. This diner, Country Cookhouse, was inherited from my in-laws.
Welcome. I'll get your table ready right away.
I manage everything alone, which makes it hard to keep up. Regular customers reassure me not to fret.
Take your time. We're fine.
Their words offer a bit of solace. Some regulars have been coming since my in-laws' time, while others are new, attracted by the proximity of their homes or workplaces. It's heartwarming to see the customers enjoying the food and the lively atmosphere. When I hear delicious, I mentally cheer. Before, my husband and I ran this place together. He always said,
"If people are hungry, they won't be happy. So, we cook to make them happy."
We enjoyed brainstorming menus, counting the cash in the register, and rearranging the seating. Those were the days, continuing until our son Mike was born and grew up to high school. But around the time Mike was a sophomore, my husband passed away in an accident. It was incredibly tough, and I even considered closing the diner. Mike had university entrance exams ahead, so I couldn't rely on him to help with the diner. I couldn't imagine managing it alone. That's when one of our regulars said,
"We're waiting for you,"
with a gentle smile. Seeing that smile, I felt like I could give it a shot on my own. It'll be okay, I'll manage somehow. I consulted acquaintances and my still living in-laws, and downsized to a scale I could handle alone. After 3 months since my husband's passing, Country Cookhouse embarked on a fresh start. Mike also successfully passed his university entrance exams and decided to attend his first choice school.
It's far from home, so I want to live on my own.
Sure, that's fine. Let's go check out some places soon. I always tried to accommodate Mike's requests as much as possible. This was because both my husband and I were always tied up with the diner since Mike was young, and we rarely had time for him. The diner was thriving, and we couldn't neglect it either. Even after closing time, my husband would stay back at the diner for preparations. I would return from the diner, cook dinner, and wait for my husband while taking care of Mike.
Is Dad still working today?
I remember him asking that every night when he was still small. His lonely expression is still vivid in my mind. I wished we could have sat together as a family of 3 around the dinner table more often, but it happened only once or twice. I felt guilty for making Mike feel lonely all this time. I want you to learn what you want and pursue what you want to do with all your heart. I told him before his university entrance exams and the day before he moved. Mike just nodded slightly, looking somewhat downcast. He didn't say anything more. Even after he started living on his own, I managed the small diner by myself. We didn't need to rely on scholarships or loans for university tuition, as we had enough savings. The 4 years Mike spent as a university student passed by in a flash. Throughout that time, I continued running the diner alone. When Mike graduated from university and started working as a full-fledged employee, I pictured him in a suit and tie heading off to work. Seeing that image, I couldn't help but smile to myself, thinking about how much he had grown from that small boy he once was. Furthermore, he already had a girlfriend, who he was already dating with marriage in mind. When Mike introduced her to me, I was so surprised that my eyes nearly popped out. Mike's girlfriend, Rachel, was stunningly beautiful, almost like a magazine model.
Nice to meet you. I'm Rachel. I've been dating Mike.
Her incredibly beautiful voice and polite manner overwhelmed me. I couldn't help but wonder if she was the daughter of a wealthy family.
Not at all. We're just an ordinary family.
Even her gentle laughter was elegant. I wondered what charm Mike had to attract such a wonderful girl. It seemed like they were already living together. Or rather, Mike had moved into Rachel's place.
What can I do? My room is next to a noisy neighbor's.
Come on, Mike.
It's okay. I originally rented a slightly larger room, so it's just right.
Rachel's bright words were like a lifeline. Her polite language, elegant gestures, and that radiant smile, I couldn't help but take a liking to her. I know my son can be like this, but please take care of him, I said, unable to resist. And so, the two of them happily got married, and 3 years later, they had 2 children. The firstborn was a girl named Kathy, and the second was a boy named Tony. I've become a grandmother, I mused as I spoke softly to my husband's photo. On anniversaries and special occasions, I always made sure to buy slightly fancier sweets than usual. It was the same on the days my 2 grandchildren were born. Even after the children were born, Rachel would find time to visit the diner.
Hello, mother-in-law.
Oh, welcome. Rachel, what about your work?
Since the children were born, I switched to a job I can do from home.
Well, it's an age where such things are possible. I marveled, looking back and forth between young Kathy and Tony. Even these small children would grow up eventually and stand on their own, just like Mike. Thinking about it made children seem even more mysterious and fascinating. As my wrinkles increased, Kathy had grown into an elementary school student without me even noticing. Kathy, how old are you now? I asked one day when she came to the diner.
I'm 6 now, and I'll be 7 on my next birthday.
She replied with such a mature answer that it was hard to believe she was still in elementary school. She must take after her mother, Rachel said, mentioning how helpful Kathy was with her younger brother.
They don't even fight, they get along so well.
Rachel proudly boasted, beaming as she spoke. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, as if everything was leading to a bright future, but it wasn't the case. I had one worry, Mike. He had a personality that couldn't stick to a job for long. He quit the company he joined right after graduating from college in less than 6 months.
There's too much to do. It's not worth the pay.
Then he found another job. But he left this one too within 3 months.
I can't do what I want, and it's impossible without remote work these days.
If you keep changing jobs like this all the time, you won't achieve anything.
It's not my fault. It's because of the bad economy.
He'd always find some excuse to quit whenever something didn't suit him. Seeing him like this, I just shrugged my shoulders. If you're not working, then you must be taking care of Kathy and Tony, I assumed.
Huh? No, I'm not. Rachel takes care of them, so I'm not involved.
He replied. It was Rachel who supported the household in place of Mike. Even when talking to me, Mike was glued to his smartphone screen. I wondered what he was so eagerly looking at.
Hey, Mom, take a look. I have a hobby of exploring restaurants, so I upload them on social media.
When he showed me his screen, there were rows of photos of various restaurants, delicious-looking pizzas, pastas, fried chicken, and large steaks. Mike talked about his number of followers and likes, but it all went over my head. Why don't you work properly instead of fooling around like this? I asked.
It's not playing around, it's serious. I'm aiming to become an influencer.
What's that?
Never mind. Mom, follow me and like my posts.
I don't understand that.
Give me your phone. I'll install this app and do this and that.
With quick finger movements, he swiftly set up an account and showed me which button was for like and how to view posts. But after he left, it was all still Greek to me. I don't get any of this. It's beyond me. I sighed, putting my smartphone aside and focusing on keeping the diner's accounts. Sometimes during video calls with Rachel, I found out she was also asked to check Mike's social media posts. But there were more important things to focus on nearby. I preferred video calls with Kathy and Tony over social media. Mike had helped out in my diner briefly when he was unemployed before. His reason was that it seemed easier than a corporate job. Although no job is easy, I appreciated his help in the diner. Besides, I heard that these days, it's becoming less common for children to take over their parents' businesses. I had no intention of forcing Mike to take over, and I planned to gracefully close the diner when the time came. However, perhaps there had been some change in Mike's mindset. I dared to hope that he might want to take over the diner. I happily put Mike to work in the diner, letting him guide customers and take orders. He got along well with regulars, engaging in friendly conversations, which was refreshing to see. The first week seemed to start well. I thought, maybe this suits him better than a corporate job after all. However, from the following week, Mike began to slack off gradually. He hardly took orders or did any cleaning or guiding customers. Not only that, he started browsing social media in front of customers. And regardless of whether they were regulars or newcomers, he would ask them to follow and like his posts. The next day, Mike didn't show up for work, even though it was his scheduled shift. Mike, where are you? Are you off today?
I'm quitting that job. It's tougher than I thought.
From then on, he didn't answer my calls no matter how many times I tried, and I ended up running the diner alone as before. Eventually, Mike stopped coming to the diner altogether within 10 days. Since then, he focused more on social media than anything else. On the other hand, Rachel seemed to be juggling multiple jobs lately, sacrificing her sleep. I worried she might collapse someday, but Mike showed no signs of concern. He didn't even think about giving up his restaurant tours and social media posts. During our occasional video calls, Rachel let slip her true feelings.
I just wish he could earn a bit more,
she said, sounding unusually dejected, her shoulders drooping. Her lovely smile had vanished, and her usually clear voice sounded somewhat hoarse. Mike, as usual, continued his restaurant tours and rarely stayed home. When I reproached him, he always said the same thing.
If I become famous and expand my network, it'll lead to something in the future.
While I doubted it would really work out, I still listened to his words. But deep down, I also felt a desire to support Mike if he could make a living doing what he wanted. Somewhere in my heart, I harbored the naive thought of letting Mike pursue his dreams. Rachel, too, seemed to believe in Mike's endeavors and refrained from criticizing him too harshly. Indeed, thanks to his initiative, his number of followers and likes had increased slightly. However, I would soon realize that it was a mistake. One day, I was in the diner as usual. The weather forecast had predicted it might snow at night, and it was as cold as midwinter outside, with overcast skies. Since there were no customers in the afternoon, I used the time for evening preparations and cleaning. As I diligently wiped tables, my phone rang in my pocket. It was Rachel. Thinking it was our usual video call, I answered. But the voice on the other end was very weak.
Mother-in-law, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's something I need to tell you.
To my shock, she had collapsed from overwork a few days ago and had to be hospitalized. Hospitalized? How are you feeling now? Is your body okay?
I'm okay, barely.
Don't be such a stranger. Why didn't you tell me sooner?
I'm sorry. I tried to, but Mike said it wasn't necessary.
Mike?
He said he'd take care of the kids himself. But I'm worried about them.
I see. Is Mike at home? Would the fickle Mike really take care of the kids? But if his wife was hospitalized, even Mike would have to look after the children.
He said he'd watch them. Although I want to believe.
I sensed a hesitation in her voice, giving me a bad feeling.
He's been posting photos on social media. I don't think he's taking care of the kids.
Rachel was following Mike's social media as well. She decided to check the app herself. As Rachel had said, even on the day she was hospitalized and the next, he was casually posting pictures of pizzas. Listening to Rachel's story, I was dumbfounded.
And that restaurant is out of state.
I couldn't stay like this. I couldn't imagine children under 10 cooking for themselves with their parents not around. I understand. I'll head over to your house right away.
Can I come too?
No, Rachel, you need to rest properly. I ended the call a bit sternly. Otherwise, she might really try to come along. Since she was under a doctor's orders not to move, she shouldn't push herself. I immediately put up a sign indicating the diner was temporarily closed and headed to the apartment where my son and his family lived. It's about a 30-minute drive away. I'm glad I had the spare key for emergencies. I hurriedly unlocked the door and stepped inside.
Kathy! Tony! Where are you?
The room was pitch black, making it hard to see. As I took a step forward, I bumped into something like a plastic bottle. In the silence, I took another step forward. It was chilly in the room, and it didn't seem like the heating was on.
Kathy, Tony. It's Grandma.
As I moved further in the unlit living room, two small figures moved. When I turned on the light, there, in the freezing room, was Kathy, painfully thin. Beside her, Tony trembled as he ate a banana from Kathy's hand. Four anxious eyes stared at me.
Kathy, Tony.
Unable to resist, I embraced them both.
Grandma.
Kathy and Tony clung tightly to me, sobbing uncontrollably. Their small hands gripped my body tightly. How frightened they must have been. Their mother collapsed and didn't come back after going to the hospital. They must have been terrified. Thinking about their feelings, my heart ached. I'm sorry I didn't realize sooner. Everything's okay now. I turned on the heating and pulled out their jackets until the room warmed up. I boiled water in the kitchen and brewed hot cocoa. Kathy and Tony both drank the cocoa from their mugs, looking pleased. I hadn't seen Mike so far. In fact, I hadn't even seen anything that looked like his shoes. Hoping it was all a mistake, I called Mike. He answered immediately.
Hey, Mom. What's up?
He chuckled as he spoke. What are you doing?
I'm trying out the limited time menu. It's gonna look great, I think.
Where are you?
I'm on a family trip. We'll be back tomorrow.
The phone line was bustling with noise and chatter, and I could hear the crowd. He was clearly at a tourist spot. But he wasn't with his family, he was alone. It seemed like he was only thinking about himself. He couldn't protect Rachel, Kathy, or Tony. I felt strongly that I had to protect them. With my insides boiling with anger, I decided to feign calm. Good. Make sure you come back safely.
Huh? Oh, right. About the souvenirs.
Before Mike could finish, I hung up. He had hidden Rachel's hospitalization from me. And he had abandoned the children to indulge in a limited-time dish. When I talked to Kathy, it seemed that Mike had been lying about going to work.
I knew it, Grandma. Mom was working too hard, right?
Even in her young age, she understood why her mother had collapsed. She might not know the word overwork, but she knew it was too much.
Mom looked sick for a long time. That's why I picked some food for Tony from the fridge.
What about you? Did you eat anything?
No. I endured it.
She shook her head vigorously. Her cheeks looked sunken, and she was skinny for a grade schooler. She must not have eaten anything during the days her parents were absent.
I want to see my friends because I haven't been to school. But I have to wait for Dad to come back.
Kathy's eyes welled up again. You're a brave girl, Kathy. That day, I decided to stay at the apartment. I wanted to cook for the two of them, but the fridge was empty. Ketchup alone wouldn't make an omelet. We have no choice. Let's eat out. What do you two want? Since they were both hungry, they couldn't stop naming various dishes. Eventually, we ended up at a buffet restaurant and ate hamburgers, grilled cheese, cakes, and more. Seeing their smiling faces, I felt relieved. A hungry stomach could dampen anyone's spirits. I remembered my husband's words. When we got home, they fell asleep quickly, their stomachs full. As I watched their peaceful sleeping faces, I thought about Mike. The next day, Mike still didn't come back. I asked Kathy how to check his status on social media. It's a convenient way to disseminate information, but it also exposes his actions. Today, it said he was eating hamburgers at another restaurant. That son. Just wait and see. I once took the children to the hospital where Rachel was hospitalized. It seemed she was just about to be discharged. At the entrance, Rachel, Kathy, and Tony were delighted to reunite.
But why are you here?
I can't forgive what my son is doing. Come to my place.
But we don't want to cause you trouble.
The one causing trouble is us. I'm sorry for what my son did. Then, I whispered a plan. Rachel was surprised for a moment but then decided to act. In the end, Mike returned a week after saying he would come back. However, his returning home was like returning to an empty shell.
Huh. What's this?
Even this he posted on social media, treating it as material for jokes, which left me dumbfounded. Just minutes after posting, he showed up at my diner.
Hey, listen to this. Mom! Rachel and the kids!
He started talking as if he couldn't believe it himself.
When I got home, there was no one, and nothing.
So? It was lunchtime, and many regular customers were in the diner. He enthusiastically began narrating to garner their sympathy.
I'm doing my best for my family. But my wife and kids left home even though I'm working hard on social media.
Well, that's tough. I listened with a weary heart, but the regulars felt differently. The sound of chairs scraping against the floor filled the air. Gradually, quietly, they closed in on Mike.
Isn't this awful? Everyone!
One of the regulars spoke up to Mike, perhaps not understanding his situation.
You're the one who goes by Mick on social media, right?
Yeah. A fan? Thanks for checking my...
No kidding. You forcibly made us follow you a while back.
Huh?
Other customers nodded in agreement.
After I was tired of too many annoying notifications, I found you've been messing around with free toppings, dismissing the food as bad after just one bite.
No, that was just a joke.
And apparently, you didn't even take care of your wife and kids properly, just playing around.
Well, I was doing that to become an influencer and earn money.
What influencer?
That regular customer scolded Mike with a red face. Others joined in, condemning him one after another, and the diner echoed with their angry voices. Before Mike arrived, I explained the situation to the regular customers. Rachel canceled the apartment lease as soon as she was discharged from the hospital. Now, she's living with Kathy and Tony in my house because Mike wasn't providing for the family and was going on restaurant tours alone. Moreover, he was solely focused on increasing his followers and likes on social media. When I revealed everything, the regulars, who had been monitoring Mike's actions on social media, were furious. One of them said,
I'll give him a piece of my mind.
And called others, and they all gathered. Mike, oblivious to all this, continued posting on social media.
Stop it! I'm not at fault. Help me!
With tears in his eyes, Mike was pushed out of the diner by the regulars.
Don't ever show your face here again.
He was severely scolded by the regulars and ran away screaming. Since then, he disappeared. Several weeks passed. With the arrival of spring, I began hearing about measures for hay fever in the weather forecast. I've been feeling a bit itchy in the nose lately, Perhaps it's because of that. Rachel complained about her runny nose due to hay fever. I noticed some of the regulars started wearing masks too. I wondered about Mike, but as far as I knew, he didn't suffer from hay fever. His whereabouts remained unknown. He had been urging his friends to follow him, all in his desire to become famous. However, it backfired. Since that day, his social media accounts, known to his followers, had blown up. Naturally, his identity was exposed to those around him, and there was no chance he'd return to this town. The consequences of mistreating food had caught up with him. While living with Rachel and grandchildren, I continue to manage the diner as usual. We recently created a website for the diner, allowing customers to make reservations via smartphones. Rachel, being a web designer, found it easy to handle. The website also reflects the spirit of the diner and the values inherited from our parents-in-law, as well as a section about my husband.
I've never met my father-in-law, but I guess I could hear.
It's a lovely website. Thank you, Rachel. Her contributions don't end there. We've systematized inventory management and sales accounting, making daily bookkeeping much easier. What used to be done manually is now calculated automatically when inputted into the computer. It's quite convenient. Even I, who wasn't used to smartphones, quickly adapted. With the ability to handle reservations over the phone, our customer base has expanded. Kathy starts dropping by the diner after school and handles phone calls confidently.
Hello, this is Country Cook House. Yes, are you making a reservation?
Even though she's a bit hesitant, she refuses to let me take over, shaking her head confidently.
Our recommendation is the fried chicken. It's seasoned with garlic powder and crispy when freshly fried.
Watching her respond while looking at her notes captivates the regulars. They're all smitten by her cuteness. I wonder if she'll take over the diner someday. But for now, I'm running the diner as usual, thinking about it. How did you like this story? Please subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.